When we look at a company, we almost always focus on one thing. How much profit did it make? But what if I told you there's a much deeper, way more important question to ask? And that is, how good is the management at actually making that profit? That's what we're digging into today. We're looking at return on equity, or ROE. It's this powerful little metric that helps us measure the true quality and efficiency of a company's leadership.
So to get our heads around this, let's set the scene with a guy named Arav. Now, Arav's a pretty sharp investor. He looks at things like earnings per share, the profit for each share, and free cash flow, which is the actual cash the company has left. He's feeling pretty confident. But then, he gets hit with a question that just flips his whole perspective upside down.
And this is the question that gets right to the heart of it. Just imagine two businesses, and they had the exact same profit, 100 crore. But one of them needed a giant mountain of capital to get there, while the other was way more nimble and did it with much less. Now, are they really the same? Are they equally impressive? Of course not. And that simple question changes everything.
So this is the big shift in thinking we need to make. We're moving beyond just that final profit number, and we're starting to ask about the process. It's a question of quality, not just quantity. Really, what we're asking is, how good is the management at turning the money shareholders have already put into the business into brand new profits?
Okay, to really get this to sink in, let's step away from the numbers and spreadsheets for just a second. We're going to use a super simple analogy about farming that I promise will make this whole concept of ROE just click.
All right, just picture this. A company's shareholder equity, which is really just the money the owners have invested, plus all the profits that have been kept in the business. Think of all that as a plot of farmland. This is the main asset the management team has to work with. It's their land, and their job is to cultivate it and hopefully bring in a big harvest.
So look, we're starting on a totally level playing field here. Company A and Company B, they both have the exact same size farm. In our case, that's 300 crores of shareholder equity. They are starting with the exact same resources, no advantages. But wow, look what happens next. Even with the same amount of land, one farmer is clearly better than the other. Company A's management, they produce a massive harvest, a really high profit. Company B, well, not so much. This shows you exactly what we mean by management efficiency.
And that right there, that's the perfect way to think about it. ROE is simply the crop yield. It's the number that tells you how much profit, or harvest, the management was able to squeeze out of the farmland of shareholder capital they were given to work with.
All right, so we've got this whole farmland idea down, right? It makes total sense. Now let's see how that looks as a simple, practical formula that you can actually use when you're looking at a company.
So, the official definition? Well, return on equity is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It measures the return, which is the net profit, that a company generates compared to the equity that shareholders have in that business. It is a direct, no-nonsense measure of how efficiently they use capital.
And the formula itself? It's about as simple as it gets. You just take the net profit, that's our harvest, and you divide it by the total shareholder equity, that's our farmland. You'll usually see it as a percentage, which gives you this nice clean number you can use to compare companies.
So why should you care so much about this one number? Well, because it totally reframes the conversation. Suddenly, it's not just about earning money, it's about how productively a company uses the resources it already has. A business that can keep a high and steady ROE year after year, that often tells you it has a really strong, durable business model. But, and this is super important, it's not a magic bullet. You have to think of it as part of a team, working right alongside other key metrics like EPS and free cash flow.
Okay, but, and this is a big but, this is where things get tricky. A high ROE can look amazing on the surface, but sometimes it can be a wolf in sheep's clothing. It is not always a sign of a great company.
And these are the classic traps people fall into. They see a big ROE number and just assume, wow, excellent management, case closed. But that is a really dangerous assumption. See, a high ROE can be artificially pumped up. How? Well, a company can just take on a ton of debt. And because equity is just assets times minus liabilities, like debt, piling on more debt can actually shrink the equity number in our formula. And a smaller denominator makes the final ROE percentage look way better than it actually is.
So that leaves us with this huge question every single time we see a high ROE. Is that impressive number showing us true, top-notch operational skill, or is it just a really good disguise for a mountain of financial risk?
All right, let's put this into practice and make it crystal clear. We're going to look at two fictional companies. On the surface, they seem to be doing equally well, but ROE is going to tell us the real story.
Okay, check out these numbers. Silvernest and Urban Axis both pulled in a net profit of 60 crores. Now, if you stopped right there, you'd probably say, hey, they're doing about the same. But now look down at their shareholder equity. Urban Axis needed a massive 600 crores of capital to generate that profit. Meanwhile, Silvernest did the exact same thing with only 300 crores. The second you do the ROE math, the truth just pops right out.
And boom, this chart just says it all, doesn't it? Silvernest ROE is a super healthy 20%, which is double Urban Axis's at 10%. It's such a clear, visual way to see the massive difference in efficiency.
And that's really the whole story right there. The management team at Silvernest was simply better. They were more effective, they squeezed more profit out of every single rupee of the owner's capital, and that is a clear sign of higher quality management and probably a much, much stronger business.
So we see that ROE gives us this incredible peek behind the curtain at management quality. But what it also does is lead us directly to our next and honestly probably our most important question.
So here it is, your practical checklist for using ROE like a pro. First, you've got to calculate it. Second, you have to compare it, but only with other companies in the same industry. Third, check its history. You're looking for consistency over a few years, not just one good year. Fourth, combine it with other metrics. And finally, and this is the big one, you have to investigate. If you see an unusually high ROE, your first thought shouldn't be wow, it should be why. And your very next move should be to check that company's debt levels.
And this is really the journey of a smart investor, right? You find a powerful tool like ROE, but then you also learn its biggest weakness. The moment you realize that debt can inflate this number, it naturally leads you to the next unavoidable question. How much leverage, how much debt is this company actually using? Because, getting great returns is one thing, but understanding the risk they're taking to get those returns, well, that's the next level of the game.